You know, when we had Neil Patrick Harris in the studio, he did an impression of you. Take a look.
I'm Regis Philbin. I've been working for 27 years on the same show, and they can't get me a new chair. It's outrageous.
So what do you think? Did he nail you?
No.
Two boys, 15 years, thousands of merch drops. It was absolutely endless back in the heyday. The scant amount of recent merch we've been given over the last couple of years absolutely pales in comparison to what this franchise had birthed a decade before. Many modern cartoon fans would absolutely kill to have a fraction of the clout that these two boys had with the entire Disney marketing team. There is simply no modern equivalent. Make no mistake, I think they are going to pull out all stops to try and promote the next 2 seasons, but I don't even think they can top the pure insanity of what's to come. If you watched the previous video related to these tie-ins and such, you already know the depths they were willing to go in the early 2010s. In the early 2020s, coming off of a global pandemic, things just aren't the same. But that doesn't mean we can't try and appreciate some of the promotional materials and events that were pulled off way back when. I was actually kind of surprised because out of the small sample size that did watch that last video, it didn't seem like anyone really remembered any of the stuff I was talking about. New, old fan, didn't really matter. All this just flew over everyone's heads. It's shocking, truly. I mean, how could you forget about the Shark Tank? This is the big thing. I thought everyone loves Doofenshmirtz. What is this? Anyway, I think it's finally time to jump back into the files and examine 10 more twisted Phineas and Ferb tie-ins. At number 10, we got these various PSAs from the series peak. This could include international entries as well, but there are 3 in particular that stuck out to me when I put this entry on the list. Got Milk, Take Me Fishing, and the various internet safety campaigns that were leveraged. Now, these are really a tie-in in the loosest sense. They don't really benefit the show at all. It's more so just a display of its general popularity. Ideologically speaking, it is probably closer to something like the Girl Scout tie-in. Not as epically commercialized as it could be. But I think it's evident that they don't just hand these out to anybody. You probably already know that Disney Channel is one of the significant few cable networks to not air commercials. Well, commercials for other people anyway. There are some sponsorships and such, but they're usually tied back into Disney programming or events or whatever. So it's not the same as like Nickelodeon blasting 10 spots for Orbeez or something. Stuff like this can easily help fill the gap between programs and such, but the degree to which they can be reran would vary from campaign to campaign. There was like one summer where they played nothing but the Cyberspace Rules of the Road ad, like, all the time, on repeat, for every single program on the schedule. It was madness. At number 9, we have the illustrious Kim Possible cameo. Yeah, I know it's a bit of a leap to make from hawking milk to the one and only KP dropping in on an AGP mission, but sometimes truth is stranger than fiction. Early on in the show's lifespan, Disney Channel hosted several Spot the Diff marathons. Pretty self-explanatory. You watch altered versions of the episodes to see what little details they changed. In the altered version of Lawn Gnome Beach Party of Terror, Kim shows up for a brief second before all the gnomes flood the lair. See, I actually found this to be a pretty cool addition. Kim Possible, even with the extended run, ended like right before Phineas got on the scene. So in some way, I kind of saw this as her passing the torch. It's kind of cool. Back in the day, everyone and their dog was begging for a Gravity Falls crossover, which would have been cool. But I think the Kim Possible one is really where it's at. I know they're going to make like 9 of these Meep specials, so I think at one point we need to have one called Call Me, Meet Me, where in like the last 30 seconds we reveal Kimberly Ann Possible swooping out of the shadows to save Agent P from reckless abandon. Someone needs to make it happen. I mean, are we gonna act like that's not possible at this point? They're bringing everything back. Still waiting on Brandy and Mr. Whiskers. For number 8, we have the illustrious GForce promo. We all remember GForce, right? The big summer action blockbuster featuring 4 little hamsters. Or or gerbils, sugar glass. I don't really know what these things are, but it was a big hit during the summer of 2009. Everyone was getting ready for it. To help promote it, Disney had co-opted a music video contest they created the year previous called You Rock. Terms are pretty simple. All the kids gotta do is submit a music video of them singing, dancing, whatever, to these 4 Disney-sanctioned tracks. And in order to promote the promotional tool, why not have everyone's favorite platypus get in on the action?
I'm ready to rock, and I'm ready to rock. I'm ready!
Remember, this movie came out the summer of 2009, so that was the beginning of Phineas and Ferb's peak of popularity. The show already had legs. It's already being featured in certain places, but to think that such specific emphasis was placed on the Disney Channel gang that they chose to commission this was such an interesting footnote. At number 7, we've got the Where's My Perry app. Now this one's actually pretty simple. In mid-2011, Disney had released the illustrious Where's My Water mobile app. It's a little story about a little gator that just likes to take showers and gets sabotaged along the way. It's nothing complex, there's not much to it. It's just a fun little game that was perfectly fitting for the time and turned out to be moderately successful. Less than a year after the fact, they released the first spin-off in a line of many, many successors titled Where's My Perry? A game that perfectly followed up on the original, got plenty of interaction from Doof, Monogram, and Carl, and in general just seemed like a successful integration. By this point, you can't really get it through the App Store anymore. That era is long since past. But if you ask around, most people have pretty good memories playing it. There's really nothing else to add beyond that. It's just a good set of games. Between this and maybe Platypus Day, this is probably the integration that is most familiar to you as an audience member. And rightfully so. I would hope that this is the one that everybody talks about if there happens to be a tie-in that is remembered for years and years. At number 6, we have an entry that's only titled in my notes as Wayne Newton in Vegas. Riveting. So Wayne Newton is like this old age lounge singer from like the mid-20th century. He's probably closest in DNA to Sinatra. He's part of that big brass style of music that was popular at that point. He's like quintessential Las Vegas talent. He's actually still kicking around if you can believe it, but by 2010 he was already pretty old. But you can bet that old Mickey found a way to bring him back to Vegas for what can only be described as the Phineas and Ferb Vegas Spectacular. Yes, I'm being serious.
He's a semi-aquatic, egg-laying mammal of action. He's a furry little flatfoot who'll never flinch from a fray. He's got...
This is different. I wouldn't put it among his best work, to be honest with you. But it is different. You gotta understand, when this show first came out, it was lauded and applauded as the cartoon's cartoon. To some, Dan and Swampy were considered the unofficial successors to Jay Ward in some capacity. This show was always popular with kids, but back then, especially, this was peak boomer humor. And this probably appeals to someone more in the creator's age demographic than it would to us. So watching it now in isolation, it might be a little off-putting. But as far as entertainment goes for a whole room full of executives from all across the country, you couldn't have picked a more appropriate tribute to this show's staying power. For number 5, we have the officially sanctioned Across the Second Dimension music covers. I don't think I need to tell you how big a deal Across the Second Dimension was back in the day. Even in the context of general DCOMs, they did do a lot to prop it up. Honestly, all that stuff could be in a video of its own if you want to see that. By this point, everyone was aware that the most recognizable part of the series' ethos was the music, so that was the first source that they tapped into to promote this new movie. See, during that time, Disney Channel internationally had reinforcements similar to what we had at home. They facilitated dozens of names and bands and such. A fair amount of the time, this talent was used in conjunction with the American Disney Channel talent. But sometimes there were some that just transcended the pack and became scene stealers in their own right. One such example would be the fictional pop-punk band Rock Bones, stemmed from the hit Argentinian sitcom titled Peter Punk. The show is kind of like I'm in the Band, but more nuclear. You got the title character who lives in this family of rockers and he just has wacky adventures around town and shit. That was the whole crux, but then they turned the fictional band in that show into a real one. They got a couple of albums and they did a couple of collabs and it kind of worked. They were one of the entities contracted to sing one of the songs from the upcoming movie. You can find versions of the song Summer in Spanish and in Portuguese. They're actually pretty solid. No complaints there.
Verano es cada momento valioso de verdad. Verano es como el mejor cuento que se tiene que contar.
You also got the Black Pony, a German band that is independent to my knowledge, but still affiliated with some Disney projects, including this one. They covered Taking Care of Things.
Now me and my bro, we're taking care of things. We're from a pair of jokers to a couple of kings. Goes to show you never notice what a shuffle brings. Me and my bro, we're taking care of things.
There's also Simon Webb, an independent artist from the UK, who to my knowledge only covered a couple of tracks as part of a special screening they had over there.
Summer's cranky since I can't use a glass of lemon. Summer is sitting with your brother in the backyard under the shade of a palm tree. It's running this way.
Honestly, it's kind of mid. Look, not everyone can aspire to the musical talents of Triangle Boy and Stickbug. It's just not gonna happen. But I think we can all mutually appreciate the fact that they went to such lengths to make sure that not only kids within the United States were pumped for this movie, but also all around the world. At number 4, we have Japan's off-Olympic year 2-day marathon. Over 29.5 hours, they initiated an interesting little gimmick of sorts. They set up promos establishing that Perry and Doof are facing off in some kind of tournament. When you watch certain episodes of the marathon, they're participating in 10 sets of games. You pay attention, you make sure you jot down who wins, and at the end of it you might get a special prize. I don't know what the prize is, but for as much time and energy they put into just setting this up, I'd probably be satisfied with just the marathon alone. If you watch the first video, you already know that Japan pops off all day, every day, for their favorite dinner bell and beanpole. I didn't consider this to be the most ambitious promotion they have ever done, but out of the marathons, this one definitely takes the cake. I'm not gonna lie, I am a little peanut butter and jelly at the vast amount of merch that they have created over the years. And if the prize were similarly exclusive to the region, well, you might as well consider it the best dang marathon of all time. For number 3, we have the Camp Rock collab. This is pretty incredible. You have an entire music video sectioned off for this movie that, in the context of the shoot, is conducted by Phineas and Ferb themselves. It's pretty amazing. Now, the timing could not have been any better. Camp Rock 2 was released September 3rd, 2010, about a month out from Phineas and Ferb's own pretty much movie-type event, Summer Belongs to You. That summer, they had spent all of their time on Disney Channel, Disney XD, hyping up that episode along with plenty others that were premiering. So while they were promoting their own episodes, they also had this music video playing back-to-back like every other commercial break. It was corporate synergy at its very finest. Honestly, I am a little surprised. As we all know, Alison Stoner is a part of the Camp Rock crew. She was really good in the first one, but they did nothing to emphasize this link between this movie and this cartoon. They just defaulted directly to this, which, I'm not complaining, but still relatively rare for the time, and any time since. Coincidentally, they did something similar over on Disney Channel Asia, where they had the boys headlining in their promos for the holidays. They recorded new lines for both of these.
So, Ferb, what shall we do for the holidays?
So shop,
social holiday.
Do you know how crazy it is that they got Thomas in the booth for this? He only said 3 words, but that's like never happened before. That's basically like the Pope walking into your garden shed. Like, it's not happening. How did they make it happen? Like the top entries in the previous video, I think these are more important for their status. You know, anything from that time period, they really put their all into selling an aesthetic. But this is one of the few cartoons that have had the chance to stand toe-to-toe with these other shows and movies, save for maybe Kim. But I mean, even when she got to shoot her shot, she was not directing whole music videos, you know what I mean? It's always been kind of impressive. For number 2, we have Cliptastico Dos. So before there was a Disney Channel, more commonly there were Disney programs that would air during programming blocks. For a few hours during primetime slots, families all over the world got to see certain movies or shows or specials from the Disney Vault. When the decision was made to start introducing these in the 90s and the 2000s, this was the format that was used to usher in the entire idea of a channel. So in certain parts of the world, for a few hours, maybe right after school, maybe on a Friday night, you could sit down and watch a few hours out of the Disney Channel schedule they would refer to only as the Zapping Zone. It's not too dissimilar to like the late stage Friday block on Cartoon Network or the Zone for you Canadians out there. It's just a few hosts in front of this elaborate set doing games and quizzes and doling out prizes in front of a live studio audience. It's a lost art nowadays. You couldn't get that kind of experience in 2023. But during the late 2000s and early 2010s, they definitely got their money's worth. In Latin America especially, the format was popping off. This was actually the place where the Spot the Diff promos were screened initially, along with all the other promo they did for the show and all of that. The one I wanted to focus on here was the existence of the super secret Cliptastic countdown that nobody knows about or talks about, even though they beat us to the punch like several years before. I don't know if there are many surviving clips of said event. This is all I could really scrounge up. I have to assume the banner was pretty good. I'd watched several other segments just to prepare for this, and it seems like a pretty seamless crew. This is another part of the world where the show has always enjoyed immense popularity, and I'm glad to say it definitely seems to have had a consistent presence within the cornerstone of Disney Channel Latin American programming. This is only really one example of it, but this is pretty much as close to hijacking the original show as you can get. Like, if we had no extra seasons on the way, either them or Japan would be in a battle of wits for who gets to helm the unofficial sequel to the series, you know what I mean? Before we get into number 1, here are some honorable mentions. Spoiler alert, there are none. See, the last time I asked you to share your favorites in the comments, there were none, because everyone was like, what? I've never heard of any of these. Come on, there's gotta be, you gotta dig deep. You gotta give me at least one. There's gotta be some promo that we've all been missing out on. The world needs to know, America. And for number 1, I might have spoiled it earlier, we have the Platypus.
Hey, where's Perry?
If you wanna see this country, gotta travel in itch. He's 30 feet long with a trailer hitch. He's a platypus.
Want to follow Perry?
Perry the platypus.
Go to disneychannel.com/platypus.
Now again, they went especially hard for the premiere of Across the Second Dimension on all fronts, but by far this is the cornerstone of everyone's efforts. It took like 5 stops within the continental United States, and it might have been seen a couple times after that, but I mean, that's all you need. Why ask for more? The Platypus was this decked-down minivan that was used to promo mainly the first movie. I mean, it's a part of Disney Channel history. They recorded whole-ass 365s around this thing. They kicked off their grand tour in New York City. I wish I could say I was there on this very momentous occasion, but I was not. I mean, I definitely could have. I used to cross oceans for this show. But I was not. There was a choir of school children there, just singing this song. This was not weird at all. And of course they brought in the main figureheads responsible for such an iconic series. It was nothing short of magnificent. Trust me on this one, this was the only show with that level of clout, that level of popularity, and also the only one with a viable mascot to offer up. A naked mole rat does not lend itself to such immaculate design features, I'm sorry to say. There's no Rufus slander under this roof, but trust me, it would not have worked out. This is easily one of the most elaborate things they've ever done to support Phineas and Ferb. But I do think it's also one of those things that they could probably try again in current year. I don't think it would carry the same amount of weight as it did before, but seeing a new Platypus just roaming the streets, it would just kill. There you have it. Another 10 entries into the weird promotional history of this show. Bask in its glory. Mock its extravagance. I don't really care at this point. I don't think anyone's really keeping track anymore, but it's kind of tradition now, so I'll see you soonish. But not to talk about this show.